I've never told anyone this story because honestly, I don't expect anyone to believe me. If someone had told me this happened to them, I would have laughed and said they watched too many horror movies. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And every time my phone rings after midnight, I still hesitate before answering it. It all started 3 years ago. At the time, I worked overnight at a small warehouse on the edge of town. It wasn't an exciting job. Most nights were spent walking the same route every hour, checking doors, making sure nobody had broken in, and trying to stay awake until sunrise. The warehouse sat by itself. No stores, no houses, just an old industrial road surrounded by thick woods. During the day, it looked depressing. At night, it felt abandoned. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. By around 2 a.m., everything always became strangely quiet. No cars, no trains. Just a sound peace that you could listen to your own thoughts with. One Friday night, I was sitting in the security office watching camera feeds when my phone buzzed. I looked down expecting a spam call. Instead, the screen simply read, "Emergency call." No number, no contact. Just those two words. I answered. "Hello?" Nothing. Not even static. I pulled the phone away from my ear. The call timer was still counting. "Who is this?" Still nothing. Then, very quietly, I heard breathing. Slow, steady, like someone was holding their phone close to their face without saying a word. "Look," I said, trying to sound annoyed instead of nervous. "If this is some prank, knock it off." The breathing stopped. For a moment, I thought the person finally hung up. Then I heard a voice, barely louder than a whisper. "Don't go outside." The call disconnected. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Unknown calls happen all the time. Wrong numbers, telemarketers, scammers. But I've never gotten one labeled emergency call. I figured maybe it was just some weird software glitch. I put my phone back in my pocket and laughed it off. About 5 minutes later, something hit the warehouse door. Hard. The sound echoed through the entire building. I jumped out of my chair. The security monitor showed nothing unusual. Every camera looked normal. No movement, no vehicles, no people. I grabbed my flashlight anyway. Part of my job was checking any unusual noises, even though every instinct told me to stay inside. I unlocked the office door and stepped into the warehouse. The lights overhead buzzed softly. The aisles stretched farther than my flashlight could reach. Pallets stacked up like glaciers. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I slowly walked toward the loading dock where the sound had come from. Halfway there, my radio crackled. "Unit 3, report." I picked it up immediately. "Unit 3 here." Silence. Then static. Then my own voice came through the speaker. "Don't go outside." The exact same whisper from the phone call. I nearly dropped the radio. I checked the display. No active transmission, no incoming signal, just static. I shut the radio off completely. The whisper stopped. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Equipment malfunction, cross frequency, anything. I reached the loading dock door. It was still locked. No signs of damage, no footprints outside. Nothing. I was about to head back when my flashlight flickered. Once, twice, then it went out completely. The warehouse fell into total darkness. For the first time that night, I realized I couldn't hear my own footsteps anymore. I wasn't the only one standing there. I stood perfectly still. The warehouse was still so dark to where I couldn't even see my own hands. Only thing I could hear was my own breathing. Slow, uneven. Every instinct inside me told me to run, telling me this was danger. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up just enough to illuminate the floor around me. Nothing, just concrete, wooden pallets, metal shelves. I pointed the light down one aisle. Empty. Then another. Still nothing. I laughed under my breath. Maybe I'm just thinking too far. It was the kind of laugh you make when your brain was trying to convince yourself everything was okay. "You're imagining things," I whispered to myself again. As soon as I said it, Something answered. I know. The voice came from somewhere behind me. Not loud, not angry. It sounded calm, like someone standing only a few feet away. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped. My phone's flashlight slept across the warehouse. Nothing. The shelves were empty, no movement, no shadows, no person. I backed away until I felt my shoulders hit one of the storage racks. I stayed there for nearly a minute, scanning every corner. Finally, I convinced myself I had to have been an echo. Maybe by my own voice bouncing off the walls. But it wasn't convincing me. But it was better than the alternative. Then the warehouse lights came back on. Every fluorescent light flickered to life at once. The familiar buzzing filled the building. I let out a breath I realized I hadn't been holding. Everything looked normal again. I shook my head. Get it together, I told myself. I turned towards the security office. Halfway back, I noticed something on the floor. A muddy footprint. Fresh. The strange thing wasn't the footprint itself. It was where it came from. It started in the middle of the aisle. Not at the door. Not at the window. Just appearing on the concrete as if someone had taken a single step out of thin air. I crouched beside it. It looked like a work boot. Large. Bigger than mine. I followed the prints. 1, 2, 3, 4. They led toward the office. Then they stopped. No return prints. No turn. No explanation. Just 4 muddy footprints, ending directly outside the office door. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Inside the office was the only exit key. My wallet, my trucks, everything. I reached for the doorknob. Locked. I frowned. I never locked it when I left. I tried again. Still locked. Then I heard movement inside. Not walking, not talking, just a chair slowly sliding across the floor. The exact office chair I'd been sitting in less than 10 minutes earlier. It scraped across the concrete with a long, painfully slow screech. I stepped back without realizing it. Who's in there? No answer. The chair stopped moving. I instinctively reached for my flashlight as a potential defense weapon. There was nothing but silence. Then, a single knock from inside the office door. It knocked not once, not twice, but 3 times. The same 3 slow knocks I'd heard earlier that night. I grabbed my radio again. It was still powered off. But somehow, static poured through the speakers. Then it whispered, returned. This is terrifying, I thought to myself. But my radio cut through. This time, a voice returned. But it sounded terrified. Don't let it know. The voice cut off. My radio went silent. Before I could even process what I'd heard, the office door began to turn. Slowly, deliberately. As if someone on the other side was testing whether it was locked. The lock clicked. The handle stopped moving. And then, whoever, or whatever was inside, started knocking it. It sounded exactly like me. I couldn't move. The knocking continued. Slow, steady, 3 knocks. Every single time. Then it stopped. The warehouse fell completely silent again. I don't know what came over me, but I turned and ran. I didn't care about the office anymore. I didn't care about my keys. I just ran. The emergency exit alarm screamed as I pushed through the door and stumbled into the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my truck. That's when my phone rang. The screen lit up. Emergency call. I let it ring. Again and again and again. A second later, my radio, still clipped to my belt and powered off, let out one burst of static. Wrong way. I ripped it off and threw it in the bed of my truck. I grabbed my personal phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered almost immediately. I tried to keep my voice steady. I explained everything. I told her someone was inside the warehouse. I told her I heard the voices. I told her someone had locked me outside the office. She asked me one question. Are you safe right now? I looked around the empty parking lot. I think so. She told me to stay in the truck and wait for officers. 10 minutes later, two sheriff deputies pulled in the lot. I explained everything again. They searched the warehouse from top to bottom. Every room, every office, every storage aisle. Nothing. No broken windows, no first doors, no lock pricks. Nothing. One of the deputies even checked the security system. According to the cameras, no one had entered the building all night. He looked at me and said something that made my stomach drop. "You never left the security office." I frowned. "What are you talking about? I walked the warehouse." He turned the monitor toward me. The footage showed me sitting long in my chair the entire time. I never got up, not once. The timestamps matched exactly when everything I remembered. The phone call, the loading dock, the footprints, the knocking. None of it appeared in the cameras. The deputies exchanged a look. One of them quietly asked me if I'd been getting enough sleep. I didn't argue. I couldn't, because the footage didn't lie. I gathered my things and registered the next morning. A week later, one of the deputies called me. He apologized for bothering me, but said he had one question. "When you called 911 that night, who was the second person talking?" I felt my heart stop. What, what second person? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The recording picked up another voice standing right next to you. It kept whispering the same sentence over and over." I swallowed hard, sweat trickling down my brow. "What did it say?" He hesitated. Finally, he said, "It said," he finally heard me. The deputy sent me a copy of the 911 recording. I listened to it once. My voice was there. The dispatcher's voice was there. And underneath both of us, barely audible, someone breathing. I deleted that recording that night. I still don't answer calls labeled emergency call, and if my phone ever rings after midnight from a number I don't recognize, I let it ring. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.